Welcome to The Critique. This critique examines a commentary piece on Sydney Sweeney, specifically that controversial photo with freed Israeli hostages, the backlash, and, all the speculation around her and Scooter Braun.
Right.
And I have to say, the core idea here is fantastic. The premise that Sydney Sweeney is basically a cultural lightning rod that different ideologies get projected onto, that is a really powerful, really accurate observation to build on.
It's an incredible starting point. That observation is, I think, the absolute key to understanding the whole modern celebrity political dynamic. But we have to talk about focus almost immediately.
Okay.
Because that powerful anchor, it starts dragging almost right away.
I can see that. The piece kicks off with this really high-stakes look at polarization. You've got the praise from the New York Post, about her values.
Mm-hmm. And then you perfectly set that against the expected watermelon emoji outrage. And even that really vitriolic post calling her a heartless Zio whore. It sets a very clear, very political stage.
Exactly. A political stage. But here's where the piece loses all of that analytical momentum. It starts interspersing this core political commentary with completely unrelated celebrity gossip, and it just severely muddies the purpose.
Yeah, you create this high-tension political environment, and then the whole structure just breaks.
It really does. We dive deep into this geopolitical firestorm, only to, pivot so sharply into this tangential relationship drama.
Suddenly, we're reading about Scooter Braun being frustrated with pro athletes sliding into her DMs.
Right, and his old-fashioned values, and then there's that super long anecdote about her and her ex-fiancé Jonathan Vino arguing in a tinted SUV. Like, what does that have to do with anything?
It's total tonal whiplash. The reader is buckled in for this cultural map of political projection, and what they get is a detailed breakdown of relationship drama, and then you have that whole digression about Timothée Chalamet and Kylie Jenner.
Which felt like it came out of absolutely nowhere.
Right. And if this piece is truly meant to be a high-level commentary, every single sentence has to earn its place. The gossip, it's clickable, sure, but it just dilutes the central argument that Sweeney is functioning as a political figurehead.
It feels like the writer had two totally separate articles. One, a sharp political analysis, and the other, a juicy celebrity roundup, and just stitched them together.
And lost the potency of the first one, yeah.
So the suggestion here seems pretty clear.
It is. You have to restructure this. You need an unrelenting focus on the political and cultural implications of that photo.
Okay, so what if the writer feels those relationship details are necessary, maybe for context on Scooter Braun's involvement?
Then they need to be instantly politicized. They have to be professionalized. So you frame his alleged orchestration of this whole thing not as a symptom of his frustration over DMs or some domestic trouble,
but as a specific, calculated PR move.
Exactly. A calculated attempt to imprint a very specific political meaning onto her public image.
That's a great adjustment. That immediately shifts the focus away from his private life and squarely onto his professional motive, which makes it directly relevant to the core projection thesis.
Right.
So the motive is no longer about domestic concern. It's about a professional strategy to define her narrative. How does that really strengthen the projection thesis?
Well, because the thesis is that she's a blank slate, right? That meaning is projected onto her. So if her own team or someone close to her is actively trying to control what gets projected, well, that's part of the analysis. It becomes about image management in a polarized world.
So it's no longer just distracting gossip.
It's evidence of the machine at work. It's a mechanism of the narrative, not just background noise.
That makes a lot of sense.
But even with that reframing, some details have to go. They're just low impact. The anecdote about the argument in the SUV with Jonathan Davino, the constant DMs from athletes.
They have to go.
They have to go. They don't serve the political angle at all. You have to call the clutter and just maximize that brilliant political analysis you started with.
Right. Culling the clutter is step one. But even with that laser focus, I wonder if the piece still needs to go deeper on the meaning of that core observation itself.
What do you mean?
The The lightning rod concept is so strong, but it feels a little, underutilized when it comes to the real so what of the situation.
I agree completely. While the observation of Sydney Sweeney as a lightning rod is insightful, the material needs to explicitly connect this powerful concept to the high-stakes, contemporary political conflict to fully realize its significance.
The piece makes a really strong case for the angle by comparing Sweeney to Marilyn Monroe. The focus on the body, the sense that we don't know her interior life, that's a very sophisticated parallel.
It is. It's a great comparison, but the analysis sort of stops short. It doesn't explore the consequences of positioning this specific blank slate at the absolute dead center of the Israel-Palestine debate.
The significance is the missing link.
Yes. Why is this photo by this person so much more impactful than others? That core question is just left hanging. You note that being outspokenly pro-Israel is an unpopular stance for A-listers, but the piece doesn't maximize the analytical potential of that fact.
So how do we turn that insightful comparison into something analytically explosive? How does the writer do that?
You have to bolster the analytical depth, connect her status as a symbol directly to the current media and political environment. For example, explore the unique power of her passive political statement versus the active statements from someone like, say, Michael Rappaport.
Oh, that's interesting.
Especially in the context of the entertainment industry's general silence or even opposition on this particular issue.
That contrast gives it the necessary weight. Her passivity becomes the political statement. It's not a speech about policy. It's a silent image that acts as a projection screen for both sides.
Think about it. Michael Rappaport, when he speaks out, he takes agency over his message. He's accountable for his words. Sweeney's photo, though, it's just an association. It lets the audience project pure ideology onto her without the messy constraints of nuance or policy.
That lack of interior life, which the piece rightly compares to Monroe, is exactly what makes her a perfect, uncomplicated political vessel.
Perfect is the word. You even quote someone saying she's the face of the Zionist movement when she's just like, I just took a picture. The material needs to analyze that statement, explore how this passive participation radically changes the celebrity endorsement landscape for these huge controversial issues.
Which is why the photo, not a quote, is the artifact we're analyzing.
Exactly. You need to focus on why an image of association is arguably more powerful than a verbal statement in our current media climate. A statement can be picked apart, it can be walked back. A photo is immediate, it's emotional, it's defining.
And it forces others to define her. That definition sticks because, as the piece suggests, she lets herself be misunderstood. She doesn't fight it.
So the piece itself needs to elevate to meet the subject. You identify this idea that she lives a life designed for people to write think pieces about. Well, this piece needs to be that elevated think piece. It needs to analyze how that image fundamentally changes her perceived values. And you can even echo that New York Post headline. Not just the genes that fit well, it's the values too. It's no longer just an observation of a controversy. It's a cultural assessment of how fast an image can change the public identity of a major star. And that's where the political stakes meet the cultural commentary. That is the so what that needs to be fully realized.
And I think that depth, or lack thereof, leads us into the third major point for strengthening this piece, which is about tightening the logic behind some of the core assertions.
Yes. The piece makes some pretty strong assumptions about causation, particularly around Scooter Braun's role, without really exploring other explanations or providing substantive logical support.
The analysis leans very heavily on the idea that Scooter Braun is to blame and probably was the one who came up with this idea just because he's openly Jewish and pro-Israel. It's a huge jump.
It's a huge shortcut.
There's no examination of the complexities of a PR team or the motivations of the group Stand With Us who actually posted the photo, or even the possibility that it was just an organic interaction at an event.
It is a shortcut, and a serious piece of critique can't rely on that. We need to increase the robustness of the argument by shifting from a simple assertion, he did it, to a more comprehensive analysis of why he or others might have done it.
But isn't asserting Braun's involvement sort of a necessary analytical shortcut? I mean, everyone just assumes it was him. Doesn't examining the ambiguity just slow the whole piece down?
That's the risk. I get it, but the reward is so much higher credibility. If you rely on an unsubstantiated claim, a skeptical reader might just dismiss the entire theory. But if you acknowledge the ambiguity, that it could be organic or a move by the Stand With Us group, you show the reader you've considered all the angles.
Which makes your eventual conclusion, even if you still point toward Braun, much stronger.
Much more robust. And this approach actually strengthens the core projection thesis too.
How so?
Well, for instance, you can analyze the likelihood that Sweeney, given what we know about her letting herself be misunderstood, just took the picture. Maybe she didn't fully grasp the geopolitical context or the specific aims of the group that would post it.
And that interpretation means the political meaning was truly externally imposed on her.
Right. Rather than being manufactured internally by her team. It moves the entire analysis from who is to blame to how did this image become so weaponized? Which is a much more interesting question.
That is a much better.
And look, if you still want to stick with the Braun as orchestrator theory, you can. You just have to anchor it in something better than his old-fashioned values about DMs, which we've agreed is just clutter.
So what do you anchor it?
His professional history, his known public profile, managing controversies, and celebrity narrative. Think about his other clients. You can establish a much stronger, contextually relevant motive based on professional strategy, not domestic gossip.
That turns it into a credible business analysis, which is what the piece is aiming. And while we're on this section, we have to mention that jarring tonal.
Oh, yes. The Make-A-Wish Foundation comparison?
It just completely undermines the seriousness of the analysis. You're talking about a potentially calculated PR move in a geopolitical conflict. And then there's this facetious comment. It's just so jarring.
It signals to the reader that maybe the writer isn't fully committed to the gravity of the subject. If you want the reader to take the political implications seriously, the tone has to stay elevated and analytical.
So that line just has to be cut entirely.
Completely. Eliminate the facetious theory, shift from asserting causation to analyzing possibility, and use professional history to bolster your theories, not gossip. That's how you get to logical robustness. Okay, so to wrap up, this material has an extremely compelling central idea: Sydney Sweeney as its ultimate cultural blank slate for political projection. That insight, especially with the Marilyn Monroe comparison, is just an excellent foundation. The foundation is strong. Absolutely. But the execution needs focus and it needs depth to realize its potential as, essential cultural critique. First up, call all that tangential gossip to maintain a laser focus on the political analysis.
Then, deepen the significance of that whole lightning rod concept. You have to explore why her passivity and the use of an image instead of a statement gives her this unique power in this specific context.
And finally, strengthen the logical connection between your assertions and your evidence, especially when it comes to Scooter Braun's involvement. Explore the ambiguity and professional motives rather than just jumping to a conclusion about his intent.
Do those three things. Tighten the structure, deepen the significance, and logically bolster your assertions. And this piece is going to transcend simple celebrity commentary and become a really vital piece of cultural mapping. I can see what you're going for here. Let's see how we can strengthen this on the next pass. We encourage you to implement these changes and submit your revised material back to us for a future critique.